A very warm welcome. You're watching World 360. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Trade, tariffs, technology and tough talk summarized the meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President Donald J. Trump in the White House. The two leaders addressed several key topics including trade, defense, energy, technology, the extradition of 26/11 attack accused Tahabur Rana, illegal immigration and the Russia-Ukraine war. Interestingly, just hours before the two world leaders met, the US President announced sweeping reciprocal tariffs, hitting both allies and competitors in a dramatic escalation of an international trade war that economists warn could fuel inflation for developing economies like India, Vietnam, Thailand and Brazil. However, both world leaders have now agreed to settle the negotiation talks on trade in the next few months, getting United States President Donald Trump to respect India's strategic interests and spare New Delhi from the wrath of his tariffs and deportation plans will not be easy. Mr. Modi's friendship with the US President has been a trump card for New Delhi to navigate the chaos unleashed by Mr. Trump. But now that bonhomie is on trial, Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi both relish their image as strongmen leading their nations, but one of them will need to blink. Who will that be? For now, let's have a quick look at the headlines before we decode Prime Minister Modi's trip to the United States. Prime Minister Modi, during his two-day visit to the United States, introduced Make India Great Again following a meeting with the US President, saying that MIGA and MAGA together have become a mega partnership for prosperity. US President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi held bilateral talks on Thursday. India and the US are set to deepen their strategic partnership across key sectors as Trump vows to increase military sales to India. In a major boost to trade ties, New Delhi and Washington have agreed to boost bilateral trade by $500 billion by 2030. Both India and US have also agreed to reduce tariffs and non-tariff barriers. And amid fears over the ceasefire deal collapse, Hamas says it will continue releasing Israeli hostages under the Gaza deal. However, Israel has stated it will not allow heavy equipment into Gaza through the Rafah crossing. On Friday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi concluded his spa-packed two-day visit to the United States, where he held bilateral talks with President Donald Trump. The two leaders discussed key issues including trade, tariffs, extradition of 26/11 accused, Russia-Ukraine war, purchase of F-35 fighter jets and India's border dispute with China as well. Prime Minister Narendra Modi coined the word MIGA, Make India Great Again, which is his version of MAGA, Make America Great Again. And so Prime Minister said that MIGA and MAGA, when put together, become a mega partnership for prosperity. The two leaders also announced plans to negotiate the first tranche of a mutually beneficial multi-sector bilateral trade agreement by the fall of 2025. In the area of trade and investment, the leaders launched Mission 500, aiming to more than double total two-way trade to $500 billion by 2030. Now, the joint statement between India and the United States highlights a number of important areas of collaboration, especially in the areas of defense, trade, energy and counter-terrorism. Let me also take you through the key points. First up is defense. In a big boost to defense ties, India and the United States are now set to begin discussions on a new 10-year defense framework that will run from 2025 to 2035. Both countries are going to now expand defense sales and co-production marks, which is going to be a shift towards mutual investment in military capabilities. The two leaders shared plans to pursue this year new procurements and co-production arrangements for Javelin anti-tank guided missiles and Stryker infantry combat vehicles in India. US and India will also review arms transfer regulations. Now, this kind of partnership, especially when it comes to co-production and co-development, is a first for any country dealing with the United States as far as defense is concerned. The next comes trade. Both nations are going to expand trade and investment. India and United States are now aiming to boost bilateral trade to $500 billion, that too by the year 2030. And so India and US have agreed to negotiate the first tranche of beneficial multi-sector bilateral trade agreement by the fall of this year in 2025. And both nations will also reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers as well. The third one is the energy security. US will support India's bid to join the International Energy Agency as a full member. Both nations will increase their energy trade, which is a great plus for India. And US-India 123 civil nuclear deal to be fully realized. In fact, this was a deal that was forged under previous Prime Minister, the late Dr. Manmohan Singh. And the last one is the fight against terrorism. India and US are now going to boost cooperation against terror groups. Pakistan is asked to bring the 26/11 perpetrators to justice. India, US will further ask Pakistan to now ensure that its territory is not used to promote cross-border terrorism.
अमेरिका के लोग राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप के मोटो मेक अमेरिका ग्रेट अगेन, भारत के लोग भी विरासत और विकास की पटरी पर विकसित भारत 2047 के दृढ़ संकल्प को लेकर तेज गति शक्ति से विकास की ओर अग्रसर है। अमेरिका की भाषा में कहूं तो विकसित भारत का मतलब मेक इंडिया ग्रेट अगेन, यानी मीगा। जब अमेरिका और भारत साथ मिलकर काम करते हैं, यानी मागा, मागा प्लस मीगा, तब बन जाता है मेगा पार्टनरशिप फॉर प्रॉस्पेरिटी। आज हमने द्विपक्षीय व्यापार को 2030 तक 2 गुना से भी अधिक बढ़ाकर $500 बिलियन तक पहुंचाने का लक्ष्य निर्धारित किया है। हमारी टीमें एक पारस्परिक लाभकारी ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट को शीघ्र संपन्न करने पर काम करेगी। ये ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग में जुड़े हुए पूरे इकोसिस्टम पर हमने वार करना चाहिए और अमेरिका और भारत मिलकर के हमारी कोशिश है और हमारी कोशिश रहनी चाहिए कि इस प्रकार की पूरी इकोसिस्टम को हमें जड़ मूल से नष्ट करना चाहिए ताकि ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग बंद हो।
In addition, the United States and India will be working together like never before to confront the threat of radical Islamic terrorism, a threat all over the world, actually. Today, I'm pleased to announce that my administration has approved the extradition of one of the plotters and one of the very evil people of the world, and having to do with the horrific 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack, to face justice in India. So as we deepen our defense partnership, we'll also strengthen our economic ties and bring greater fairness and reciprocity to our trading relationship. As a signal of good faith, Prime Minister Modi recently announced the reductions to India's unfair, very strong tariffs that limit U.S. access into the Indian market very strongly. And really, it's a big problem, I must say. India imposes a 30 to 40 to 60 and even 70% tariff on so many of the goods, and in some cases far more than that. And as an example, a 70% tariff on U.S. cars going into India, which makes it pretty much impossible to sell those cars. Today, the U.S. Trade deficit with India is almost $100 billion, and Prime Minister Modi and I have agreed that we'll begin negotiations to address the long-running disparities that should have been taken care of over the last 4 years, but they didn't do that. I look at India, I do see the skirmishes on the border, which are quite vicious, and I guess they continue to go on. If I could be of help, I'd love to help, because that should be stopped. That's been going on for a long time.
I'm joined in by Tara Kartha, who's a former director at the NSCS, P.K. Basu, who's a senior economist, Mr. Bob McKeown, who's a former Republican congressman. Many thanks to you, gentlemen, and Tara for joining in. Tara, I want to bring you in on the deal. First of all, when we talk about this newly forged partnership between India and the United States, what's been your assessment? Critics have, in fact, as far as trade is concerned, have also shared fears that perhaps it could still meet the same fate as has the India-United Kingdom FTA. There's been a lot of difficulty as far as that FTA is concerned. Do you think we'll be able to navigate this FTA or perhaps a multi-sectoral agreement as India is calling it?
See, trade is obviously not my area of expertise, but I'll tell you something. This team, which is our ambassador in Washington, the NSA, who's here, and the Jaishankar. Jaishankar has got decades of experience, in this area. You have a person who has continuity. This whole team, and particularly Jaishankar, he knows, he's been dealing with these issues for years. I think that has been your biggest strength.
I'm going to bring in P.K. Basu on that note. Mr. Basu, how do you weigh in? Many have in fact said that this could also open greater avenues to forge a better bilateral trade relationship with Washington. Having said that, look at the way we are navigating the threat of tariffs compared to, say, Canada, Mexico, China. All the three countries have in fact vowed to slap retaliatory tariffs as well. But India has not. Will that give us some kind of leeway now?
Well, I think it's important to understand that the high tariffs that you've quoted, for instance, on vegetable oils, India is not an exporter of vegetable oils. It's very, India's exports of oil meals, etc., are very small. And not much of that goes to the US anyway. So what will happen with that is that if India cuts the tariff substantially, then perhaps some US soy oil imports will come into India, quite a bit more, and they will replace palm oil from Malaysia and Indonesia. Currently, we get a lot of our vegetable oil from Southeast Asia, and it is bilateral deals. We could see an increase in US imports of those things from the US. Now, with regard to trade, really what has been agreed today is that India and the US will try and overcome the reciprocity in tariff hikes over the next 6 months. So by September, by the fall, September, October, there should be some sort of deal sorted out.
Mr. Ranjan Chakravarti, how do you respond to the developments that have taken place as far as the extradition of Tahawur Rana is concerned? Is this the beginning of several more extraditions that are expected out of the United States? Because remember, the MHA has a list of 12 names prepared.
Well, yes, it's a good beginning because you have to fight terrorism, you have to catch the culprits who plan terrorism. And obviously, Pakistan has not cooperated, but this person was caught there, and his involvement is now proven, approved by the courts, and now the executive that President Trump has now approved, I think. So we will be able to try him in India and obviously punish him after a due process in the courts of India. So that is a good thing, and I think there are many more like this person who sit there and plot against not just India but various other countries, and who are on the list. We have our own list, and I think we will make progress on this. It's a very good beginning in my view.
That too on a day when India is marking the anniversary of the Pulwama attack. Tara Kartha, I want to bring you in on that aspect of counter-terrorism. We've known Donald Trump's own policies towards Islamic terrorism particularly. One would also now think of how the United States is going to respond when it comes to the issue of Khalistan terrorism, at least one that's emanating from the US soil. And I particularly mean the issue of Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. Tarakarta, that's a question for you.
Me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I think there was an element saying that, I mean, there was an aspect in that joint statement saying that elements would target diplomatic embassies. So that has been acknowledged, if not in black and white, but still it's an encouraging thing. See, there is also, as you know, among the 10 names, there's a bunch of these guys, Goldie Brar and all his
Yes.
associates, who are directly, as in terms of an FIR, linked to cases and killings here. So those are solid legal grounds for asking for extradition. But if they do extradite, it will be quite a huge thing because, as you know, very few people have been extradited from the US. Over the last, I think 2008 onwards, 11 people out of 65, if I get the number right. So if that happens, that's a great thing. There is a third issue here. See, when Donald Trump is talking of, tightening border controls with Canada, preventing human smuggling, drug smuggling, which is a reality, right? That's happening across the Canadian border. A lot of those gangs are Khalistani gangs.
The
So
ones
there is
operating these human trafficking rackets,
yes,
actually. That's
yeah.
true. That's a good point that you've made. And I actually want to bring in Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti on that point that you've just made. When you talk about how these illegal human trafficking rackets are operating, Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, the role that Khalistan terror threat is playing, because, look at the way the money is also funding drugs, illicit drugs that are also being smuggled from Canada over to the United States.
These are all interlinked in the sense that the human trafficking, the mafia, the Khalistanis, and the drugs, all kinds of things they are all linked with one another, and they all operate for their basically their own benefit. Khalistan is just a cover for this, and so because many of them go there and they destroy their passports, and then they say, look, I am persecuted in India, so give me asylum. And these countries like the US have pretty loose laws, I think lax laws on these things. And it's a huge process, prosecuting them. It costs a lot of money to bring them back. And but I think slowly, even when we have gone through so many terrorist acts in the world, I think there is some realization, never too late, I think, that you can't allow people like Pannu to sit there, threaten what he has not said. I mean, he said he'll blow up Indian planes, Indian aircraft. Don't forget that one Indian aircraft was blown up by these kind of people who are based in Canada. So all this talk of freedom of expression, etc. It's all very well. We all understand that we are
Right.
democracy, but then there has to be a limit. When you start threatening other countries that I will
Right.
destroy, and they are involved in killings. Let me tell you.
And that kind of censoring didn't come from the Biden administration, which is why I want to ask you, Congressman Bob, if we can expect some level of censoring coming in from the new Trump administration, given that not just Prime Minister Modi, but even Donald Trump have similar nationalist ideologies. They have a similar stance when it comes to countering terrorism. Tulsi Gabbard also seems like a very promising pick as the chief of U.S. intelligence.
Well, I completely agree with what was just said, and what I would only add is that this is the benefit of friends working together. A relationship has three prongs. It has economic, as we discussed a little bit ago, and then it's diplomatic, and then it's military. And genuine friends, you can work together on all of these fronts. And what America did in the free trade agreement is it opened our borders in Mexico and Canada, and China particularly, and other folks began to use that free trade to go through those countries. And that's what a businessman says, that's just stupid. I'm not a diplomat. We're going to stop it. And so in the process of, we see this relationship. And let me just conclude by saying, I don't think that Pakistan should get overly sensitive at a statement that your land should not be used as a source of terror. I think all of us should agree to that and not object to such a statement.
Tara, I want to bring you in on the point that Bob was making with regards to Pakistan and how rankled it is at the moment. How do you see this now shaping up the new geopolitical realignment in South Asia vis-a-vis the United States?
You're asking me, right?
Yes, Tara.
Yeah. So, sorry, the audio is not too good. See, Pakistan is, nobody's even talking about Pakistan, because it's such a non-issue these days.
No,
And which is,
nobody's talking, but they continue to remain a safe haven for terrorists. Henceforth,
yeah.
we can't just let them make an exit from our memories.
No. What I meant is, in the larger international issue of, trade,
Yes,
energy,
I
all
agree.
the hundreds of things we're talking of, Pakistan is nowhere. In terms of terrorist haven, yes, it's right up there, up front. I mean, the fact that they are shouting, there's a very good reason. Because both Tahawur Rana and David Headley, apart from being Pakistanis, both went to the same Pakistani army school, right? That is one. That is Hassan Abdal in near Islamabad. Second thing is, both know who are the army guys involved in this. The Major Iqbal, the ISI guys. These people, the Habur Rana in particular, has liaised with those guys. So he's going to sing, if he has to sing, he's going to talk about all these Pakistan army linkages. So it's a huge problem for the Pakistanis. All that story is going to come out.